You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. That's the entire doctrine in one sentence. Most men are waiting, waiting to feel ready, waiting to be perfect, waiting to have all the answers, waiting to feel confident, waiting to have enough experience. But that's backwards. You don't become great by waiting. You become great by starting, taking imperfect action, by willing to look foolish, by being willing to fail. Greatness isn't something you have before you start. Greatness is something you build through starting. So today we are exploring what it means to start, not to prepare to start, not to think about starting, but to actually start. Because you don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. Most men are trapped in the perfectionism trap. They believe they need to be perfect before they can start. They believe they need to have all the answers. They believe they need to be ready. But that's a lie. That's an excuse. That's fear dressed up as wisdom. Perfectionism is procrastination. It's the fear of failure disguised as the pursuit of excellence. Here's the truth: you will never feel ready. You will never have all the answers. You will never be perfect. And waiting for those things to happen is just another way of saying that you're never going to start. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12 says this: there's a way that appears to be right, but in the end, it leads to death. Perfectionism appears to be right. It appears to be wisdom. It appears to be excellence. But in the end, it leads to death. It leads to a life unlived. It leads to dreams unrealized. Because perfectionism is the enemy of progress. It's the enemy of growth. It's the enemy of greatness. The men who become great aren't the men who waited until they are perfect. The men who become great, the men who start before they are ready, who take imperfect action, who are willing to fail publicly. That's the difference between men who dream and the men who do. The men who dream wait for perfection. Men who do start before they are ready. Starting is powerful. Starting creates momentum. Starting creates learning. Starting creates opportunity. When you start, you're not just taking action, you're changing your identity. You're no longer someone who wants to do something, you're someone who does it. That's the power of starting. It's not about being perfect, it's about being real, it's about being committed. When you start, you begin to learn, begin to understand what works and what doesn't, begin to build skills, begin to develop expertise. Most men think expertise comes before action, but it doesn't. Expertise comes after action. You don't become an expert by studying, you become an expert by doing. When you start, you also create opportunity. And opportunities don't come to people who are waiting, or opportunities come to people who are doing. Opportunities come to people who are visible. Opportunities come to people who are in the game. So when you start, you're not just taking action, you're opening doors. You're creating possibilities. You're putting yourself in a position to win. That's why starting is so powerful. Because starting isn't just about the action itself. Starting is about everything that comes after the action. It's about momentum, it's about learning, it's about opportunity, and none of that happens until you start. So, what happens if you don't start? What happens if you wait for perfection? Stay the same, life stays the same, the results stay the same. But that's not really true. Your life doesn't stay the same. Your life gets worse because the world is moving forward, the world is changing. And if you're not moving forward with it, you're falling behind. So the cost of not starting isn't staying the same. Cost of not starting is falling behind. Cost of not starting is becoming irrelevant. Cost of not starting is dying before you've lived. That's why starting matters so much. Because not starting has a cost, a real cost, a permanent cost. Let me give you some examples of people who started before they were great. J.K. Rowling. She was a struggling single mother. She wasn't a great writer when she started. She was just a woman with an idea and a typewriter. But she started. She wrote Harry Potter, and now she's one of the most successful authors in the world. Elon Musk. He wasn't a great entrepreneur when he started. He was just a kid with a dream. He started Zip2, it failed. He started X.com, became it became PayPal. He started Tesla. He started SpaceX. He didn't become great before he started. He became great by starting over and over again. Michael Jordan. He wasn't a great basketball player when he started. He was cut from his high school basketball team. He was told he wasn't good enough, but he started anyway. He practiced, he played, he failed, and he became one of the greatest athletes of all time. The Apostle Peter. He was a fisherman. He wasn't educated. He wasn't eloquent. He wasn't great. Jesus called him to start, to follow, to preach, to lead. And Peter became one of the greatest leaders in history. Not because he was great before he started, but because he started before he was great. All of these men have one thing in common. They didn't wait to be great. They started. They took imperfect action. They were willing to fail. And through that process, they became great. That's the pattern. That's the principle. You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. So, how do you overcome perfectionism? How do you start before you're ready? First, accept imperfection. You have to accept that you're going to be imperfect. Your first attempt will be bad. Your first product will be bad. Your first performance will be bad. That's okay. That's expected. That's part of the process. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4 says, whoever watches the wind will not plant, whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. In other words, if you're waiting for perfect conditions, you'll never plant, you'll never reap. You have to accept imperfection and plant anyway. Second, define your minimum viable start. Define your minimum viable start. What's the smallest version of what you want to do? What's the bare minimum you need to start? If you want to be a writer, the minimum viable start is writing one page, not a book, one page. If you want to be an entrepreneur, the minimum viable start is talking to one customer, not building a perfect product, talking to one customer. If you want to be a leader, minimum viable start is leading one person, not leading a company, leading one person. Define your minimum viable start and then do that. Not the perfect version, the minimum version. Third, set a start date. Don't say, I'll start when I'm ready. Set a specific date. Say, I'm starting on this date and just start. Because as long as you don't have a date, you have an excuse. But once you have a date, you have a commitment. Fourth, share your commitment. Tell someone you're starting. Tell a friend, tell your family, tell your community. Because once you've told someone, you have accountability, and accountability is powerful. That's how you overcome perfectionism. You accept imperfection, you define your minimum viable start, you set a start date, you share your commitment, then you start. The framework for starting and building momentum is this. Step one, start small. Don't try to do everything at once. Start with the minimum viable version. Start with one action, start with one day. Step two is to do it consistently. Once you've started, keep going. Do it again tomorrow. Do it again the next day. Build momentum through consistency. Step three, learn and adjust. As you go, you learn what works and what doesn't. Adjust, refine, improve, but don't stop. Don't go back to waiting for perfection. Keep going and adjust as you go. Step four, celebrate progress. Celebrate the small wins. Celebrate the first page you write. Celebrate the first customer you talk to. Celebrate the first person you lead. Because those small wins build momentum. Those small wins build confidence. Those small wins build greatness. Step five, scale. Once you build momentum, once you've learned what works, then you scale. Then you do more. Then you go bigger, but not before. First you start, then you scale. That's the framework. Start small, do it consistently, and learn and adjust, celebrate progress, scale. Follow this framework and you will build greatness, not because you started great, but because you started. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 that says, there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. Appointed time for you is to start now, not tomorrow, not next week, not next year, now. Because the world doesn't need you to be perfect. The world needs you to be real. The world needs you to be committed. The world needs you to start. The only person who can start is you. Only person who can take that first step is you. Only person who can be willing to fail is you. So the question is, are you going to start? Are you going to take imperfect action? Are you going to be willing to look foolish? Are you going to be willing to fail? Because you don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. So start today, not tomorrow. Today. Take imperfect action. Be willing to fail. Be willing to look foolish. Be willing to be a beginner and watch what happens. Watch the momentum build. Watch the learning happen. Watch the greatness emerge. That's the appointed time. That's the doctrine. Start. This is built, not felt by the rice code. I'll see you all in the next one.